of Tinkercad and how to use some of the functions on this program. So when you first log into Tinkercad, you will be shown your dashboard, which has your profile over here on the left, and then all of your designs that you've created will save automatically here. You also have a section on the left-hand side for any lessons you've completed, which are part of the Learn section up here. If you want to create a new design, you'll click this blue button here to create a new project. And then this is the interface of Tinkercad. So you'll see this blue square here is called the Workplane. You can think of the Workplane as sort of like the table that your designs sit on. So this is underneath the Workplane and this is on top. And the Workplane is divided up into a grid, and each small square represents 1 millimeter. One of the bigger squares represents 10 millimeters. Now, if you think of a graph in algebra class, this is your x-axis going across this way, and then your y-axis is going up this way. There is also a third axis called the z-axis, which is the three-dimensional plane. So the x and y-axis is flat on the Workplane. That's two-dimensional. The z-axis is three-dimensional. And you can see that when I place a shape on the Workplane. This side right here is your x-axis. This side here is your y. And then the line going up here is your z-axis. Or you can also think of that as the height of your object. So some basic functions on using Tinkercad. One of the first ones that you might have noticed is the ability to rotate, or in this case we call it orbiting, because we are orbiting around. So you can think of that as like when planets orbit around each other. We are moving around an object. So the way that I'm doing that is by right-clicking on my mouse. I'm clicking it down and I'm holding it, and I am moving my mouse. Another way to do this is up in the left-hand corner, you'll notice a cube up here that has left, front, top written on it. So if you don't have a computer mouse, you can use this function to rotate around your object. If you would like to click to see a specific side or face, you can click the top or one of these arrows to see the back, the bottom, the front, the right, and the left. Now, if you'd like to move side to side, this is called panning, P-A-N, to pan. So this is to move side to side or up and down. The way I'm doing that is by clicking the scroll wheel on my mouse. I am not scrolling the wheel, but I am clicking it down and holding it, and then moving my mouse side to side. Unfortunately, if you don't have a mouse, there isn't a function to do this. So it's important that you have a computer mouse because it's really helpful and it just makes your designing much easier. To zoom in and out, you can scroll the wheel on your mouse. So this time I'm moving the wheel up and down. And if you don't have a mouse, another way to do that is use the plus and minus sign right here on the side. You'll notice when I hover over the plus and minus sign, it says there's a plus sign and a minus. That's telling us that you can also use a keyboard function, so you can actually click the plus or the minus sign on your keyboard as well. So there's 3 different ways to actually use the zoom function. And right above the plus and minus button is called the Fit All in View, or you can press F on your keyboard. So this is helpful when maybe you have an object on the work plane and you're zoomed out really far and you want to quickly be able to see that object up close. You can hit F on your keyboard or this button right here, and it will bring you right to the object and fit it in the window for you. Okay, so those are the basic functions on how to use Tinkercad. When you want to put an object here on the work plane, your basic shapes are here on the right-hand side. And these are the shapes that you'll probably use most often. There is also a drop-down menu with many other shapes, which you can look through on your own time. I'm not going to go through all of those right now, but it's a good idea to check out a lot of these because there might be some stuff that will be helpful depending on what you're designing. Another great function is that you can star something that you, or favorite something that you use often so that you can access it easier in the future. So let's say I am using one of the shape generators and it's all the way on page 9. Let's say I want to be able to access this easier. I can click the star and then all of my favorited will be down here at the bottom where it says favorites. And then you can see I can access that in the future more easily. But for today, we'll just stick with basic shapes. When you want to put a shape on the work plane, you are going to click and drag it. Now to select any object, you just click on it, and you'll notice that it is very slightly highlighted in blue. That's how you know what is selected. So it's important to be aware of that because sometimes you might accidentally go to select an object and you might select the one that is behind it, and you'll know you've selected it because you'll see that blue outline. You'll also see the bounding box that ends up around both objects. That tells you that both are selected. So I've shown you that you can select an object by just clicking on it. If you'd like to highlight one or more objects, you can also click and drag a red bounding box around both objects like this. So I'm clicking my mouse, my left click on my mouse down, and I'm holding it down and I'm dragging a box around. Another way to select multiple objects, in case let's say I only wanted to select these two at the same time and not the one in the back, sometimes the box isn't a good idea because it will select all the objects in the view. So you can actually click on an object, hold the Shift key on your keyboard, and then select the other one. So I'm holding the Shift key down at the same time as I click the other one. And then if you accidentally select something you don't want while you're holding the Shift key, remain holding the Shift key and just select it again, and it will deselect it. So you can see I have both selected now. To delete something, you can just press delete or backspace on your keyboard, or you can hit the trash can button up here. So a couple of other functions. When we want to resize an object, there are small squares on each corner and also up here at the top. There's also black ones on the side. So if I click and drag this, it will resize it in any way that I pull it. And you can see the size in millimeters changes. So right now it's 28 by 43 millimeters. Let's say I'd like to get a very specific measurement. Let's say I want it to be 30 by 32. So I can click once and just let go of my mouse. I'm clicking once on the corner, and then I can type in here 30 and press enter, and 32, enter. You can also do this for the height, so you can select this one up here by either clicking and dragging it up, or you can click on it once and then type in a specific measurement. So maybe I'll do 25. If you would like your shape to scale up equally on all sides, meaning that the size is constrained, you can click on a corner and hold the Shift key and scale it up. And you can see that it equally scales it up on all sides. So right now it's 31 by 31, and the height is also 31. This is really important when you're doing things like with a sphere and you need to make this bigger, because if you try to resize it this way, you can see that it makes it this flat sort of orb shape. So if you hold the Shift key while you do it, it will scale it up equally on all sides. All right, so that's sizing. Another function is the rotate button. So when you click on an object, at all times there will be 3 arrows. There will be one flat on the work plane. There will be one here in the back. And then there will be another one over here. You might have to orbit a little bit to see it. So in order to get the hang of which one rotates which way, I recommend just practicing with it. So I can click on this and you can see it rotates it on the work plane. So it's just rotating it flat. Now this one in the back rotates it on the other face. This rotate one rotates it this way. Now you'll notice when I rotate, it snaps to specific measurements, 22.5, 45, 90. So this is nice so that you can get a precise measurement when you're trying to just flip something upside down. But let's say you need a very specific rotation, say 27 degrees. Sometimes it's hard to do that, so if you click and drag your mouse up, you'll see a red line, and this will allow you to move at smaller increments. So you can see now I can go up to 27 degrees exactly. Be aware that if you want to rotate something and resize it, that when you rotate it and then size it, it will warp the shape. So you can see how now it's sort of a rhombus shape. So if you want to make something bigger, make sure that you do the sizing before you rotate. So before you do anything, figure out what size you want and then rotate it. Otherwise, you'll get a strange shape. Now let's say I made a mistake and I need to undo it. There are arrows up here to undo. You can also see highlighted in green that you can use Control-Z on your keyboard. You can also redo, which is Control-Y on your keyboard. This is a function that you should get used to doing because you'll often make mistakes and might need to quickly undo something. So I always have my hand close to the keyboard so I can use the Shift key on the left-hand side and the Control-Z often. So some other functions. Up here at the left, we have copy and paste, or Control-C and Control-V. So I can select an object, copy it, and then paste it, and I will have another copy. There is also next to that the duplicate and repeat function. So the duplicate and repeat function is nice because it allows you to space things out evenly. So when I hit the duplicate button, it will look like nothing happened, but what actually happened is it duplicates it right on top of itself. So all you have to do is click and drag it over. Now if I hit the duplicate and repeat button again, it will duplicate it and it will space it out exactly what I spaced out right here in between. So it will probably be about 10 millimeters difference. And I can keep doing that. And it will repeat it and put the same distance between each time. Okay. The last few things I want to show you are the grouping, aligning, and mirroring tools, which are up here on the right-hand side. So when you want to create a new object, the way that Tinkercad works is like puzzling pieces together and then grouping them to create a new shape. So let's say I want to put this cylinder on top of here and make it one shape. One thing I haven't shown you yet is how to move something up in the air, so off of the work plane and almost floating in the air. So to move something up on the z-axis, every time you click an object, there is this triangle here. And when you hover over it, it highlights red. So I can click and drag that up, and you can see it tells me with an arrow next to it how many millimeters I have it in the air. So right now it's 32. I don't need it that high, maybe 20. And if I want, I can also push this inside the object, like so. So before I group them, I might want to center these. So to align two objects together, I can select both of them and then select Align up here. Or you can also press L on your keyboard. And you'll see all of these black dots. When you hover over the black dots, it will give you a suggestion of what will happen when you do that. So if I were to align up here, both objects will align up at the very top, like so. What I want to do is center them on the X and Y axis. So I'm going to press the center one here on the X axis and the center one here on the Y. And then it's a good idea to rotate around your object and make sure that it looks correct on all sides, because sometimes something will appear to look correct in one direction, but then when you orbit around, you might not notice that it is incorrect in another way. So for instance, right now, from this angle, it looks like it's centered. But if I rotate around, you'll notice that it's not over here. So just get in the habit of orbiting often. Now let's group these together. So I'm going to select both objects by holding the Shift key and selecting both. And then I'm going to hit Group up here, or you can also hit Control G on your keyboard. And when they group together, they will become the same color. If you'd like to keep the colors at their original colors, you can click on Solid right here and select Multicolor. And you can see it will go back to its shape. It's still a group, so if I select it now, it's stuck together. If I would like to ungroup something, I select the object again and press Ungroup, or Control Shift G. And now they are two separate objects. Now let's say I'd like to cut something out of an object. So let's say I want to make a hole in the center of this cube or box. In Tinkercad, there's something called a hole shape, H-O-L-E. And you can see there's already a box and a cylinder here that are holes, and you'll know they're a hole because they are transparent and they look sort of have a gray tint to them. But you can change any object into a hole. So even this wedge can be turned into a hole. So you click on an object and select hole, and you should be able to see through it. And wherever two objects overlap, is where it's going to be cut out. So this is placed about halfway in to the box. So when I select both and group them, it's going to cut out the center. But it didn't cut out the whole thing because the cylinder stopped about halfway through. If I would like to make the hole go all the way through, I could increase the height of the cylinder so that it comes out the bottom. And now I'm going to select both and group it. And now you can see it goes all the way through. It's hollow now. So the hole is a really great function because it allows you to create brand new shapes out of two shapes. So you can see where this overlaps in this section where it's grayed out. That is what's going to be cut out of the cube or this box, like so. And then you can go ahead and change the general shape. The last one I want to show you is the mirror tool. So sometimes you want to take an object and you might want to make a direct reflection of it. So up here next to the align tool is the mirror tool. It looks like two triangles back to back. You can also hit M on your keyboard and you'll be given 3 different ways that you can reflect it. And again, just like the align tool, if you hover over it, it will give you sort of an orange suggestion of which way it will reflect. So you can reflect it on the x-axis, so it flips the other way. You can reflect it this way, so it's upside down. Or you can even reflect it completely upside down. This way doesn't really change it much. So let's try it this way. Now I've created sort of this bridge shape. Or I could do it this way, and I could reflect it again, and now it's reflected on the x and the y-axis. So that is sort of the basics of Tinkercad. Tinkercad will save automatically, periodically, as long as you have a good Wi-Fi connection, but it is a good idea to save anything you're working on and change the automatically generated name that Tinkercad gives you. So Tinkercad will always come up with a funky name, but if you click on it, you can change this to your project name. So I like to name it something that I can remember, so maybe I'd name this as project number 1, and then you press enter. And that's all. Stick around for another video on how to do some more advanced Tinkercad functions like the Workplane tool and using some of the shape generators.